Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Saddleback webinar. I'm Liz Mangus, Literacy Specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. Happy summer. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. As you are logging in, please locate your control bar at the bottom of your web browser window. That is where you are going to chat and engage with us today. You can drop questions in the Q&A area, either for Saddleback or for our presenter today, Ms. Jody Nolf. Just a quick reminder, when you chat with us today, please select all panelists and attendees before you hit send on your chat. That way, everybody who's joining us can see your comment. And if you'd like to take advantage of subtitles, please select live transcript, and then you can click show subtitles and take advantage of that. We'll get started right at 3 o'clock Eastern time. Here's how you can follow us on Twitter. So many of you are probably here because you heard about this webinar on Twitter from Jody. Thank you, Jody, for letting everybody know to be here today. So while we're waiting, let's bring in Jody. How are you, friend?
I am great. Can everyone hear me?
I'm pulling up the chat here. Okay, who's here? Oh, good. We already have 45 people joining us and the numbers are climbing. Let us know. Hi, Tim. Let us know if you're doing something fun this summer. Are you joining us from a beach right now? Are you just in your living room while the kids are playing in the backyard? What are we doing? Tell me something fun. Tell me something good.
And I'm looking at the chat too.
All right, let's see here. I want to see who our participants are today. All right, we have people from the Carolinas. Oh, Ms. Okrasky is here. Hello.
Georgia, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Making strawberry cake with the granddaughter. Oh, that sounds great. All right.
Aloha.
Finishing lunch. Oh, Hawaii is here. Great. In Florida for the summer. Nice. Yeah. Okay, California. Hello from Houston. Going to Seattle. I really want to go. You know, Seattle's one town I've never visited, and it's on my list for sure. Multitasking, hanging with the German Shepherds. I can appreciate that, Debbie. Definitely. After the year we've had, sometimes you just kind of want to hang back and chill out with the dogs, right? All right. Hello, Missouri. Hi, Cammie. Working. Oh, come on. Hope we get a little bit of time off. Okay, back to school in Tennessee.
Toronto.
All right. Hi, Miss Gutierrez. Nice to see you. Up, see, Gloria's on vacation in North Carolina. See, I am so honored that people are joining us from their vacations, right? They're literally out of town on their vacations and they're tuning in. Thank you so much, everybody. It's just about time to get started. But before we do, I have an announcement. This is a little bit out of the ordinary, but today at the end of our webinar, we are going to give away some free Saddleback books. So hi, Hannah Davis from Pflugerville. Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. So we're giving away some free Saddleback books at the end of the webinar. So if you're on live or if you've registered, we're going to pull some names and hang on till the very end and see if you win. We're going to do our Go ELL Tween Literacy Library, some additional book sets, and I'll show you what those look like towards the end of the webinar because we don't want to take away from Jody's time right now. But it's always fun when we get to give away free Saddleback books. So, all right, let's officially begin our webinar for today. So our topic is long-term English learners in content area classes. Jody is here, a return presenter, to bring us an uplifting and asset-based thinking webinar for these learners. Sometimes perspective is everything. So if you don't know Jody, let me tell you a little bit about her. So she is a full-time ESOL coordinator in a public middle school in Jupiter, Florida. She is a certified ESOL teacher and has a master's degree in education, leadership, and administration. She has over 20 years of experience as a secondary classroom teacher, teaching language arts and reading to all levels of students. So lots of secondary content area experience in the house today. And 3 years ago, she transitioned to the world of ESOL, and she coaches and creates professional development for teachers. And we're thrilled that you're back, and we're so happy everybody is joining us today. Jody, I'm going to let you take it from here. And at the end, we'll take some questions and we'll give away some books. And then we'll see everybody next week after that. So, all right, Jody, take it away.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us on your summer. I'm so excited. I am really, really excited for this. So let's start the share and let me get this going. All right. So I actually have two screens going. So if you see me kind of glance this way, it's because I'm looking at the chat. And so today we're going to look at LTELs in content area classes. We're going to be unleashing their superpowers. And before I start, I do want to mention that I know that some people are kind of changing the terminology from LTELs to more of emergent multilingual learners. However, the federal government is still acknowledging them as LTELs. And so that is why I chose to use this terminology today. However, I want to show you how they have so many assets, so many talents, that even though they're quote unquote long-term, that's not such a bad thing because they bring so much to the table. And that's what I'm going to show you today. So let's look at our objectives. And today, through dialogues with several experts, you will gain an understanding of common traits that identify long-term English learners, what we call LTELs, some people call them LTELs. Common myths surrounding LTELs, and I will say that I consider them myths, you may not, but today is all about showing you how what we tend to think of in this big group, they might actually just be myths, not truths. The unique talents of several LTELs, and simple strategies for unleashing those superpowers of LTELs in content area classes. So before we begin, please let us know in the chat box. We already know where many of you are from, thank you, but I also want you to type in, what is your superpower? Because we all have superpowers, not only as educators, but as adults who are serving our community, serving our families. So what's your superpower? Let's look at what we have going on in the chat. Empathy. That's a wonderful superpower. Multilingual. Building relationships. Bilingual. Advocating. Multitasker, aren't we all? Kindness. Patience, listening. These are all wonderful qualities. Champion. Building relation. Persistent. Bouncing back, reflective. These are terrific qualities. And I'm so thrilled that you acknowledge that in yourselves. And hopefully today you will be able to acknowledge those superpowers in our students. So here are some common characteristics of long-term English learners. Many of them were actually born in the United States. They tend to be transnational. Meaning these are students who speak one language at home and English at school, or spend part of their time in the United States and vacation or live in another part of the year in another country. They tend to speak colloquial English. Many teachers, many of my content area teachers, they may say to me, why are they in ESOL? They speak English. They don't even have an accent anymore. Why are they in ESOL? They were born here. They're citizens. They've lived here all their lives. So they are not native English speakers, but they certainly sound like native English speakers. Myth. You're saying, what? No. The research has said so. True. However, I think today you're going to see that some of these common descriptors are actually just myths. So what the research says about long-term English learners is that they lack progress towards English proficiency, and they struggle in content areas that require academic literacy. They struggle with motivation, perseverance, confidence, and life and career skills. They exhibit strong oral skills, but they have less developed academic language skills, and they tend to be at risk, especially our high school long-term ELs. They tend to be at risk or dropping out. And here is my source. However, I'm sure you've seen this in many forms of research. Myth? I think it's a myth. And you're going to see some of my experts, you're going to learn from the experts why I feel some of these qualities are just myths. So how I began to unleash the superpowers. What did I do? Well, what I really did through discovery was I questioned the experts by establishing relationships. So what I did was I made a very informal series of questions, very informal. It was, what do I want to know? I wanted to know where the students were born. And I will tell you, I could find this out in my SIS, in my student information system. However, I wanted to hear from them about their origins, about where they came from and how they felt about where they were from. So I asked that really as kind of like a little warm-up question. And if they were born outside of the US, how old were they when they arrived to the US? Did they speak or understand English before you started school in the US? Do they hear any English in their home? Do they have access to books in English at home? Do they read or write in Spanish? This was very interesting. Now, I know that we have multilingual learners from all around the world. However, for the sake of my research, our long-term English learners in my community are primarily from Central American countries. About 95% of my students come from Guatemala. We do have some from Honduras, many Central American countries. When you read, do you have to translate words from one language to another? I wanted to know, do they think in Spanish? Very interesting. And what would they say was their biggest difficulty when reading and writing in English? Because let's face it, it's not the oral fluency that they struggle with. We know from data that it is the literacy, the reading and the writing. So it was so fascinating. I'm so excited to share with you what I learned. So let's meet 5 experts. My students, they're the experts, right? So let's look at these superheroes. Now, they all just completed 8th grade, although they are all working to recoup course credits before high school. They're all level 1 readers, and they are all in the lowest 25% in both reading and math. And you might be saying, well, Jody, those aren't superpowers. Why are you focusing on that? I did it intentionally. I did it because I wanted you to know that despite what they find difficulty with, they still have superpowers and they are still very, very capable. So I needed to let you know that going in, that yes, they do need to develop a little more, but that does not prevent them from being the superheroes that they are. So let's look at Yasmine, and I did change all names. She was born in Guatemala, but she moved to the US when she was 3. She did not understand English before kindergarten, but she did hear it in her neighborhood, but she couldn't understand anything. She hears and uses English in her home with her siblings and on TV, but she speaks Spanish and Conjobal with her parents to preserve their family culture. She does not have books in English in her home. And it's very interesting, when her parents ask for a word's meaning, she will define it in Spanish, but she says the actual word in English. She is constantly translanguaging. So let's look a little bit more at this unique learner. So she thinks in Spanish, her input, her processing is in Spanish, but her output is in English. So she will process in one language and speak in another language. She reads and writes minimally in Spanish. She feels that if she were in a dual language program in elementary school rather than an English only program, her Spanish literacy skills would be better. And I want to just mention, I did not ask her that information. She is so self-aware. She said, Miss Nolf, if I were in dual in the elementary school, I think I would do better. And she just took off. I mean, they know exactly how they process. They are very self-aware learners. It's amazing. When she reads, she sometimes needs to translate words from one language to another, but she can recognize cognates. And I'm going to mention something that's down at the bottom. She feels that her biggest difficulties with reading and writing in English are with word meaning. And look at that pronunciation. That really floored me, quite honestly, because remember, they speak English. Some of them don't even have accents. They still, or at least Yasmine still struggles with pronouncing words in English. Initially, she did not know what a cognate was. She understood it after I explained. When I asked her about cognates, immediately she said, no, I don't use cognates. I don't recognize them. And I said, do you know what they are? So once she understood the concept of a cognate, she was able to recognize, and she said, yes, she does use cognates. So now let's look at Miguel. Miguel was born in the US, but his parents are from Guatemala. And he used to go and visit there in the summer, speaking mostly in Spanish, but with minimal English, obviously, because he was around Spanish speaking family members. He did learn some English in preschool and through friends. Both of his parents know some English, and he does have access to books in English at home. He can read and write minimally in Spanish to communicate with his family. Now, it's interesting. He reads and writes in Spanish and English simultaneously. Now, even though it's minimally, he is able to go back and forth. Again, more of that translanguaging. So his reading, his input, and his output can be simultaneously multilingual. Amazing, right? Talk about translanguaging. He feels that his biggest difficulty, he said, Miss Nolf, it has nothing to do with my Spanish. It's vocabulary that I don't know. It's the unfamiliar vocabulary. He thinks in English, but he adjusts his speaking, his output, to either English or Spanish, depending upon his audience. So around his Spanish-speaking family, his output is Spanish. When he is in an English-speaking environment, his output is English, and that is automatic. Amazing, right? Talk about an amazing thought process. Now we'll meet Camila. Camila was born in Honduras, but she moved to the US when she was less than a year old. She did not speak English before kindergarten, but she had friends who did. She was in a dual language program in elementary school. Just as a side note, it's a very popular program that my own children went into. It's a very big dual language program in my area. She hears English in her home now as she and her siblings are developing English, but she did not as a child. She does have access to books in English, and she only reads English books. She does not choose to read any Spanish books. She does not need to translate words from one language to another. She thinks in English, and she discusses and compares the process with her friends. I thought this was so interesting. When I asked her if she thought in Spanish or in English, she said, my friends and I talk about this, we compare. So this is so unique from learner to learner. She feels that her biggest difficulty when reading is maintaining focus. And that makes sense because she was on a school-based team. She was on school-based team for tier 2 interventions in elementary school. So that is pretty much par for the course because she was having trouble focusing. But that's not a language issue. That had nothing to do with her language. So now let's meet Jesus. Jesus was born in Guatemala. He moved to the US when he was 7, towards the end of 2nd grade, and he started school immediately. And I wanted to put that in there because he did not wait for the school year to end and summer. His parents enrolled him immediately and he finished out the school year. He did not understand any English before starting elementary school. He does not have access to books in English at home. And he feels his biggest difficulty when reading is unfamiliar vocabulary, but he is able to pick up on cognates. He was another one. Once I explained what a cognate was, oh, sure. He's had several discipline issues in school, and he was hesitant to speak with me at first. And I put that in there for a reason because it was amazing to talk to him because he tends to be a little bit closed off. He was a little suspicious of having a conversation with me, but when he realized that all I wanted to do was learn about him and the way he thought and the way he felt about learning and what he struggled with and his family, he opened up more than any of the other students. He was more apt to talk to me than any of the others. And it was so amazing to form this relationship just by asking him questions about things I wanted to know. It was amazing. He speaks Spanish, English, and Papti. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Luis. So we have another student who is also 15. He was also born in Guatemala, and he is multilingual. He never returned to Guatemala to visit, but he taught himself to read and write in Spanish so that he could communicate with his family. He is entirely self-taught. Amazing, right? When he is reading in English, he sometimes processes the thoughts in Spanish so that he can make sense of what he's reading, which I thought was fascinating. He will process the thoughts he reads in English, translate it to Spanish so that he is able to process and comprehend the reading in English. And he also will think in all three languages based upon his audience, okay? So I just found him to be amazing. And I'm stumbling a little bit because I just feel such a sense of pride when I talk about these experts, because they're just amazing in so many ways. And he's working throughout the summer to support his family. So let's do an activity, okay? In the chat box, I want you to indicate all the superpowers that these students have. And think about the myths. Remember, I call them myths, you don't have to, but what do these maybe characteristics do these superpowers dispel based upon everything that you've learned about long-term English learners? So if you could brainstorm, that'd be great. So let's look at what you found. Strong sense of translanguaging all day long. Amazing, right? Multilingual. Linguistically flexible. Metacognition. Amazing. They dispel the myth of lack of motivation, right? Knowledge of audience. Tons of knowledge. Brain doing the double work. Persistent. Resilient, right? Are these not the most resilient kids? What happened to they lack motivation? They lack perseverance. They're apt to drop out. Really? Amazing. I'm so glad that you recognize what I recognized in these students. But wait, Jesus and Luis are actually the same student. It's all about your perspective and how you view your students. Mind blown. So this student who may be a discipline problem to some of his content area teachers has completely taught himself to read and write in Spanish. This student who lacks motivation. When I said, what are you doing this summer? First thing out of his mouth, I'm going to work. I'm working all summer long. These students who arrive at the age of 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 and start school later than the typical kindergartner. They are multilingual. Amazing, right? And it's just such a rich resource that we need to tap into, these superpowers that they have. So let's look what the research says. So it is a view of learning to read in 2 languages that requires meaning making and reading words, efficiency of practice, and focus on purpose. English is considered a language that is highly irregular, deep, or inconsistent, and full of pronunciation deviations. Just because students hear a sound doesn't mean that they can always predict the letter or letter combination that produced that sound. And I wanted to include that because remember that one of the experts said she struggled with pronunciation. That completely blew me away. I thought, really? But you don't even have an accent. Your oral fluency is perfect. I admit, I was one of those content area teachers. I was just like all of you. Why are they still in ESOL? I don't get it. I was just like you. I am not a PhD in research. I am an educator who just believes in going right to the source and talking to the kids. So the research says that we need to use texts, tools, and talk that are authentic, identity affirming, motivating to students, and allow the application of reading skills when it matters most, in the act of reading. And the source, this came from Science of Reading in Dual Language, which is a very interesting article. Some of you may have read it. It is on the internet. I believe my source was from Colorine, Colorado. You could find it in many other sources. Very interesting. But much to learn, we all still have. Just keep learning, just keep learning. So strategies for improving literacy skills in content area classes. This is what I learned from the experts, my students. Establish those relationships through questioning that focuses on their unique differences and thought processes, not their similarities as a group. I'm guilty. I completely admit it. I was one of those content area teachers. I also taught intensive reading. Okay, you're going to be in this group. You're going to be in this group. These students have so many unique differences that we cannot just lump them by their due state, the date they entered a United States school. We cannot just lump them by their proficiency level, as we, myself included, as a coordinator, we tend to do. They're proficient speakers. They're emergent speakers. They're bridging. There is so much more to it than that. It's how they think, how they are processing. And if you want to know, just ask them. And the beautiful thing is, for those of you who feel as if, well, you know, I'm monolingual, remember, they can communicate with you very easily. And these students, my experts, opened up beautifully. They want to share this stuff. Even my resistant student kind of looked at me a little sideways when I said, I just want to talk to you. I think, quite honestly, I think he thought maybe I wanted to talk to him about, well, you know, you're short a few credits, you need to go to summer school. What about this referral that you got? And so. No, no, no. I wanted to talk about all the good stuff. I wanted to talk about him and his amazing superpowers. And he blossomed. He opened up beautifully. Teach students what cognates are and how to recognize them when reading. And I know it sounds very simplistic. The Cognate Highlighter browser, which is available in the Chrome store, is easy to install and use, and that can be a great teaching tool. And here are some examples of what it will highlight. Teach them what cognates are, and I cannot stress them enough. When I was a classroom teacher, I just thought it was a given. Televisión, okay, all of those cognates, all of those similarities in structure and spelling. If you don't teach what a cognate is, we cannot just take it for granted that they will know. As soon as you teach them and they understand, they will learn to pick those up. I know it sounds simple, but it was like a light bulb going off for me. Unleash those superpowers. These students have mastered oral fluency, so use alternate methods of assessment as they're developing literacy skills. So here's an example from math. Explain to me the steps you took for solving for X and Y. In science, describe the process of mitosis. How is it different from meiosis? In social studies, tell me how a bill becomes a law. In language arts, paraphrase orally, in words, with your shoulder partner, with your small group, the author's claim, counterclaim, and rebuttal in the argument we read aloud in class or that we listened to on audio. Now, many of you are from all around the country, all around the world. I will tell you, in Florida, we have the FSA, the Florida State Assessment, and we do actually have a listening component on our state ELA exam. I don't know about other states, but students need to be able to listen as well. And here's a very good tip. Have the students record their answers beforehand so that they can remember their thoughts to write down later. They can record themselves in a flip grid. SpeakPipe is another great resource. It's free, it's right online. You talk into your computer, it makes it into an audio file that you can email to yourself, and then they can listen to it multiple times, listen to themselves pronouncing the words, play it as they're writing out their answers. Why do they have to immediately go to writing? Why can't they just go from listening to writing? That's a scaffold. That is a scaffold that is easily adaptable. Connect that academic vocabulary in relevant ways, using oral language as a starting point. Again, that's a scaffold. Encourage pronunciation through repetition, read alouds, peer discussion, turn and talk, etc. All of those things that we do, all of those strategies that we like to employ with our life students, our newcomers, our intermediates. Who says that you can't do it with your long-term ELs? Why? Because they speak perfect colloquial English? They still need to learn, and this is a great scaffold. They have that superpower of excellent oral fluency. Tap into it. So here we have, for example, the Volcán de Fuego in Guatemala. And actually, this is middle school curriculum. And so here we have some academic vocabulary: fissure, geothermal, magma, cascade, and that actually is a cognate, it's cascada. Have them tap into something that they may have seen. Even secondary students love to be read to. And I don't care what level reader they are. I've taught every level. Those of you who have seen my webinars, you know that I talk about my days in the classroom. I had level 5s all the way to level 1s and everything in between. I don't care what kid was a reader sitting with Harry Potter. If I said, you guys want me to read to you? Absolutely. Every hand went up. They love being read to. And some of you may think, oh, but that's baby, or that's passive. Not if you're actively listening. Not if you are taking that information and processing it to do something with it through writing, through speaking, through other domains. Allow for wait time. Guilty as charged. Yeah, I'm one of those that didn't do that. Oral fluency can be misleading. Conversational English is not the same as academic discussion. We know that. But remember, some of our students need additional time because they are translating, they are translanguaging from multiple languages as they learn. I did not know this before. I thought they don't need the extra time, they don't use it, they rush. Maybe they're rushing because they don't really have the time to process. We have to remember that. And some of them may need to be taught through modeling. Wait, let's process this. Let's think about what we just heard, read, and let's make some sense of this. It is a step-by-step process that we sometimes take for granted, and I was completely guilty of that. Use sentence stems and frames to get students started on their writing. You know this is my go-to, people. You know this is my favorite. This is my absolute favorite. You know I don't like that. I do not like a blank sheet of paper. I do not like that blank sheet of paper. And if I don't like it, you can rest assured your students don't like it. Here we have a paragraph frame based upon the RACE's writing format that I also presented for Saddleback a few months ago. You can go to their website and watch that whole process. And here is a fill in the blank with a word bank. These are the strategies that we're already doing. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. Where is it written that long-term ELs who have oral fluency can't use these? They're easy to scaffold. We tend to just kind of dismiss that for some reason. There is no written rule that says you can't use these same ESL strategies with your long-term ELs. They are still learning. Do not let their conversational English sway you. And you may say, as I did, ah, they're plenty talkative. I hear them talking in lunch and they're talking in the hallways with their friends, but that is conversation. Remember, these might be the students who you say they never participate. I ask a question and their hand never goes up because you are asking academic questions. We expect it from our newcomers. Okay, they're in their silent period. They haven't grasped the language yet. We'll get there. Well, these same strategies apply to your long-term ELs. They do not yet have all of those academic skills and strategies and terminology to raise their hand to answer, but they will get there just like they all do. So a final thought. I learned more from my students than I think they ever learned from me. This was a huge learning experience for me. I am humbled by what I learned from them. And they were so giving and so appreciative that I wanted to know these things about them, not the typical, do you have a good internet connection in your house? How's your family doing? How's your little sister? These were questions that really got to the heart of how they learn, and they really loved it. And as Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, I'm a very strong believer in listening and learning from others. And this is from one of the superheroes, one of the experts during Teacher Appreciation Week. And this just really touched my heart, as it would touch all educators. We live for this. And it was just something that I had to really just share. And I do want to share that these students knew what I was doing with this presentation. They knew why I wanted to know. I said, you're going to be a big part of how people around the world are going to be learning. I said, you are such an important part of what I'm going to be sharing. And that really made them proud of themselves and of their culture and of how far they've come. So let's connect. You know, I love to connect with people. I am on Twitter at Jody Nolf. You can email me at jody.nolf@palmbeachschools.org. I also have a website and a Padlet where you can find professional development, links to videos, links to my favorite websites, lots of goodies that I encourage you to use, share with your colleagues, use in professional development, because we are all aiming towards the same goal with our students. And I'm just thrilled that I was able to share this with you today. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Jody. I'm going to take the screen back, and don't go anywhere yet because we do want to give away our Saddleback books, but we have some questions that came in. So let me go back here. And as usual, before we get into questions, we want to let everybody know who's coming up next week. If you enjoyed this webinar, I encourage you to register for next week's webinar with Dr. Mandy Stewart. Are any of you familiar with this book? I know I've seen this book pictured a lot on Twitter. People are doing book studies. Mandy is a co-author of this book. So the webinar she's doing next week is creating a multilingual ESL classroom. And she's going to talk a lot about leveraging these strengths and incorporating literature in multiple languages. Even if you don't speak your students' native language or first language, she's going to give a lot of practical tips for how you can leverage that, because it is an asset and we should know what to do with it. So, and a lot of us do need help with that. So I think you'll really enjoy Mandy's webinar next week. You can register on our website, or we'll be sending out emails as we normally do to remind you and to prompt you to register. So please check that out. This is what we are going to be giving away additional book sets for. This is our Tween English Learner Library, our Go ELL Tween English Learner Library. So these are books that are organized into content area genres, fiction and nonfiction, a lot of content area vocabulary integrated, and they're written at a first to a second grade readability. Very flexible resource. I did a whole webinar on this to introduce it back in May. You can check that out on our YouTube channel. As other things you can check out on our YouTube channel are on-demand digital webinar, in case you need Saddleback digitally, and also Jody's previous webinars. She mentioned her races writing webinar, and that's on the YouTube channel. And there's a link there there as well in the description that has the resources for that webinar as well. So definitely check that out, have a look, and get your hands on those resources from that one. Okay, let's get to the questions. Susan was very active chatting with us, and she had mentioned very early on, you said all of your experts scored at the 25, they were in the lowest 25%. Right. And she wanted to know, was that like in the school, or was it based on state test data, or was it like a national? And I said, I think it's based on state assessment data, but I wanted to clarify that with you.
No, that's a good question. I sometimes take it for granted that every state has its own system. So after we get FSA data, our database actually, and I'm kind of rolling my eyes because I don't know how I feel about it, they will actually, you can sort by lowest 25% and it will color code. For example, next to the child's name, if it's pink, their lowest 25% in reading. If it's blue, their lowest 25% in math. And if they're red, as most of them are, their lowest 25% in both. And so it really stands out because it's just glaring in red. But yes, it is based upon state data of reading and math scores.
Okay, thank you for that. And Susan had mentioned in the chat that she wished that there was more literature in 2 languages where you could really emphasize that code switching is something that very intelligent and successful people do. And so Susan, I wanted to mention, definitely check out next week's webinar with Mandy. I think you're going to learn more about that. Yes.
Can I just say, I'm so thrilled that that many of you appreciated what really excited me, that you're seeing, wow, man, these kids are really smart, you know, and that's what I want the message to be, not only to the audience today, but I want this message to go out to schools, because I'm very sincere when I admit I was one of those content area teachers, level 1, you know, struggling with reading, because I also taught intensive reading. And I never knew how talented they are until I went to the source. So thank you to the audience, to all of you who are really appreciating what my experts had to say. And I want to take that back to them and share with them how excited you all are about how talented they are.
And something I was thinking of, Jody, as you were talking, is not only did they provide you with so much knowledge and so much direction, you, by asking those questions and having that conversation, you gave them an opportunity to really learn, possibly to advocate for themselves in that situation. Like, oh, I can, this is how it affects my learning. And when you position a student to be able to advocate for themselves and to be able to educate their peers and their content area teachers, that's powerful, you know, and to really change their own perspectives on their strengths is huge. So I love the conversations and all the information that you gathered and that you're sharing with us today. So yeah, Julia, I know last year was very hard, but this really is a very uplifting webinar. So I'm really excited about it. But okay, let me get back to the questions here. So I want to crowdsource some of these questions because I know, Jody, your students mostly come from Central America, so you may not have the answer to these questions. But Helen wanted to know, is there a similar concept to cognates for Asian languages? So I did a quick Google search, and there are some things here. I don't know if there's like an app or anything in the same way that Jody was sharing, or an extension that could help with that. But there's definitely some information out there. Google pulled up some really interesting information. So if anybody out there has information on that, if you have students who come from predominantly Asian countries, what are your thoughts on that? And then Amy wanted to know, what about a list of reading titles for level 1 students? Amy, I can tell you, if you're not a member of the Facebook group Leading ELLs with Pamela Broussard, people, if you ask this question in that group, you're going to get a ton of responses. You're going to get a ton of great responses. So yeah, Graham, cognates tend to be more loan words from English and Asian languages or vice versa. Okay. Japanese borrowed many words from English, but not sure that qualifies as cognates. Yeah, I'd read that too, Chris, but oh, I'm sorry, Angie, the Facebook page is called Leading ELLs. It's a group page, and the administrator is Pamela Broussard. I'll put that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Pam's a mentor of mine. Pam is fabulous. As far as you know, selected titles, I have been out of the classroom for a while. My personal thing is, you know, when kids would say to me, Miss Nolf, what do you read, or what should I read? My philosophy, and this is just as a classroom teacher and as a mom, read anything. And that, I think, came from my mother. You know, whatever they want to pick up. It doesn't necessarily need to be on their level. Would that be preferable? Absolutely. Would it push them a little bit? True. But read anything. And I used to, in my classroom, post a list of my favorite books, because I'm a huge sci-fi nerd, and I like the dystopian stuff. And so I would post it on, and I would constantly update it, and I would post a list of my favorite books, and the kids would go in the back, and I see them, you know, looking, because that was a book that I read and loved. And I always said, you know what, I'm actually kind of selfish. I'm not going to recommend a book to you that I wouldn't even read. You know, why would I do that to you? I'm selfish. I'm going to recommend the stuff that I like. And so as far as a reading list, whatever that kid is willing to pick up, I think is great. And it might not be the more educator side of you know, of an answer, but that is truthfully how I feel. Let them read whatever they want to read.
And you will find, I know, Saddleback plug, of course, this is a Saddleback webinar.
Oh,
you're going to find for your level ones and your newcomers, our Saddleback books are usually a hit with that crowd. So definitely check out our website, email me for specific suggestions on that too. So I don't want to like miss the opportunity to like tell everybody again what we do here at Saddleback, which is publish great books for English learners. Okay, Adriana wanted to mention that Immersive Reader is a great resource to support all languages. So even though we may not have many cognates for certain languages, Immersive Reader is a great go-to tool. So thank you for that. And then somebody had a question about the role exit testing plays in students not placing out of services, because this person has had lots of, quote, long-term students getting A's and B's in college, but they never tested out of ESOL services. So, I mean, that's an interesting point. And I think it speaks to your larger message, which is these kids are brilliant, you know, and they're still in the program probably for a variety of reasons. But they're taking some are taking college classes while still in high school. So yeah, I'm sure testing definitely plays a role in it. Like exactly how much or what percentage, I don't know. Jody and I aren't researchers on this, but what are your thoughts?
I have actually exited some long-term ELs via committee, meaning that they were level ones when the data came back, and I'm saying they're never going to get out of the program because of their FSA scores. What I do is I try to look at all the resources, especially their access scores. I want to see how they're doing overall with their language. And then I would call a committee. I did this with several students. And I said, look, I'm going to be exiting you. Obviously, we meet with the parents. I explain everything. And I actually went to my instructional coordinator, because as a newer coordinator, this was a few years ago, I said, you know, is this okay? And she said, you know, you need to have a committee meeting and talk about why you think that the student should be exited. And one year, I think I exited about 6. I'm very, very selective. Let me tell you, when you exit the right kid, that kid will flourish, not flounder. Because the kids, again, my experts, came right back to me And they loved not having that, again, in the SIS, that little icon. It's for us, it's a little green icon by their name saying that they're in the program. They like not having the stigma of being identified as an ESL learner. Again, not every kid, but when you really know your kids, as I know you all do, you can make that assessment. I don't know what the guidelines are from state to state and from district to district, but the students that I did exit, man, they took off. They totally flourished because I think they felt weighted down by constant, oh, great, I'm in ESOL, like, oh, great, I got to take the access again. I said, you're not going to have to take access anymore. You will still get extra time. You will have your legal accommodations. If you need a heritage dictionary, you will still get all those by law, but we're going to remove you from the program. And they were thrilled. But again, you have to be really selective and really, really know your kids. And I'm sure you all do.
Okay, I think we are at that point, ladies and gentlemen, where we can, thank you for your participation, by the way. This has been so fun. This has been great.
I love all the comments.
I know.
Thrilled that it resonated. And I'm really, really happy and I'm very grateful.
So let's pick a winner. Actually, the winners have already been picked and they texted them to me. So I'm going to tell you in a minute, but earlier somebody was saying, what are some good level 1 books? Saddleback, of course, and then check out the Leading ELL Facebook group for more suggestions on that. So our winners today for our Go ELL additional book sets will be, and this is a combination of people who are on live with us and some who just registered but will catch the recording. So if you're watching this recording, surprise. Okay, we have Norma Cibrian Aleman, congratulations. We have Janice Jones and Angelica Garcia. So we will be reaching out to you. We'll be emailing you with information on where to send those books. So congratulations to our winners. Thank you everybody for joining us today. And next week, as I said, we'll have Dr. Mandy Stewart on. This is where you can find Saddleback on wherever your favorite social media platform is. We're there, so check us out. And a big thank you for all of the work that you do, and enjoy your summer. You deserve it. And thank you, Jody, for this great uplifting webinar that helps us to change our perspective and see strengths, which is so important. So thank you, everybody. We will see you next week. Take care and enjoy your summer break.